The distress beacon had been dead for 11 minutes when Lieutenant Cole Harmon's ship dropped out of hyperspace and nearly clipped an asteroid the size of a city block. He had not planned to be this far out. The reroute was supposed to be temporary. A fuel calibration error, a software patch that needed 3 hours, and a navigation system that had decided, at the absolute worst moment, to forget what a star map was. Cole was 29 years old, flying solo on a deep-range survey mission for a private contractor, and he was now approximately 4 light-years from the nearest relay station, hovering in a debris field that did not appear on any chart he owned. His hands were already moving across the console before his brain finished processing the situation. Proximity alert. Hull temperature rising. Decur debris field density at 17% above safe threshold. The ship's voice, a flat, synthesized tone he had named Greg in a moment of loneliness 3 weeks into the mission, rattled off numbers with the emotional weight of a grocery list. Cole killed the main thrusters and switched to lateral maneuvering. The ship groaned. Something scraped along the port hull, and he did not look at the damage readout because looking at it would not help. What he needed was a clear lane out of the debris field in about 4 minutes without anything going catastrophically wrong. He got 2 minutes. The structure appeared from behind a rotating rock mass the size of a stadium. It was enormous. It was old. And it was, unmistakably, artificial. Cole stared at it for exactly 3 seconds, which was all the time the debris field allowed before he had to swerve hard to starboard to avoid a collision. When he stabilized and looked again, the structure was still there. A station of some kind. The hull material was dark, almost black, and it did not reflect light the way metal did. It absorbed it, drank it, held it. The architecture was unlike anything in the human catalog. Sweeping curves instead of angles. Layers that moved independently, slowly rotating at different speeds like nested rings. And there, along the middle band, a faint amber glow that pulsed with something that felt uncomfortably like breathing. Greg informed him that the structure was emitting a low-frequency signal. Cole informed Greg that he had noticed. The debris field was getting worse, and Ecot 2 of the rocks he had been tracking had broken apart and spawned smaller fragments that were now moving in unpredictable arcs. His fuel reserve was at 61%. Enough to navigate out, but not enough to fight the current, and also make it to the relay station without drifting for a day and a half. The station's outer ring had what looked like a docking bay. The seal around it was intact. The amber light was coming from inside. Greg calculated the probability of the station being inhabited at less than 3%. Cole thought about that for a moment. Then he guided his ship toward the docking bay. The approach took 12 minutes. The bay opened as he neared it, which Greg noted was either automated or something had opened it deliberately. Cole did not find either option especially comforting. But the debris field was closing in behind him, and the inside of the bay was calm and pressurized, according to his external sensors. The doors sealed shut after he landed. He sat in the cockpit for a long moment. The interior of the bay was lit in that same amber tone, warm and low. The walls were covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift when he looked at them from certain angles, though he could not tell if they were moving or if the light was playing tricks. There was dust on the floor, a lot of it, the kind of accumulation that did not happen in a year or a decade. He pulled on his suit, checked the oxygen supply, confirmed that the external atmosphere was breathable but not tested, and decided to keep the helmet on anyway. He checked his sidearm. Standard issue low yield, enough to stop something roughly human-sized if it came to that. He opened the hatch. The silence inside the station was a different kind of silence than space. Space was empty. This was a silence that had once been full of something and was now waiting to be full again. His boots left marks in the dust. He was the only thing moving. The corridor beyond the bay stretched in both directions, curving gently upward in a way that suggested the station's gravity came from rotation rather than a generator. The walls hummed, faintly, a vibration more felt than heard, like the station was aware of something it hadn't been aware of in a very long time. Cole chose the direction the amber light was stronger. 3 junctions, 2 sealed doors that opened when he approached. One room that held what appeared to be a garden, now fossilized into pale mineral shapes that used to be plants, their forms preserved perfectly, reaching toward a ceiling panel that still emitted a slow, ultraviolet pulse as if it had never stopped trying to feed them. He kept walking. The door at the end of the main corridor was larger than the others. It was the only one that did not open automatically. Cole stood in front of it for 30 seconds, listening. Nothing moved on the other side. The amber light was coming from beneath it, bleeding through the seal in a thin line. He found the manual release panel on the left side of the frame. It was recessed, almost invisible, designed to be found only by someone looking specifically. He pressed it. The door slid back with a sound like a long exhale. The room beyond was circular. The ceiling was domed and transparent. Now and through it, the debris field glittered against the black like scattered fire. The amber light came from a central column that rose from the floor to the ceiling. A softly glowing pillar embedded with thousands of small crystals that pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves. And beside it, connected to it by a lattice of thin filaments attached at the temples and wrists and spine, suspended 3 inches off the floor in a field of that amber glow, was a woman. She was not human. Not exactly. The proportions were close enough that Cole's brain tried to file her under human before stopping, reconsidering, and refusing to commit. Her skin had a faint, luminescent quality, a pale silver blue that caught the amber light and held it differently than skin should. Her features were angular, but not sharp. Her hair, or what served the function of hair, moved slowly in the absence of any wind, dark filaments with threads of light running through them. She was tall. The filaments connecting her to the column pulsed in sync with the crystal light. She was alive. Greg, monitoring through Cole's suit sensors, confirmed a heartbeat. Slow, extremely slow. 1 beat every 14 seconds, but present. Cole stood in the doorway and did not move for a long time. Then he crossed the room carefully, crouched near the base of the column, and started trying to understand what he was looking at. The filaments were not mechanical. They were biological, part of her. The column was not a machine in any human sense. It was more like a garden, growing something, sustaining something, trading something with the woman it held. He did not touch anything. He sat down on the dusty floor, pulled his field tablet from his suit's chest pocket, and started recording everything he could see. Whatever this was, it was above his pay grade by several orders of magnitude. But she was alive, and he had nowhere else to go until the debris field outside cleared, and the station's docking bay had power and pressure. And Greg had just confirmed that the station's life support systems were running at 42% capacity. Cole Harmon, 29, underpaid survey pilot, 4 light years from anyone who could help him, made the most consequential decision of his life. He stayed. The filaments detached at 0317 station time, which Cole had calculated by syncing his suit clock to the amber column's pulse cycle and estimating from there. He had not slept. He had eaten 2 protein bars and cataloged everything in the room that could be cataloged without touching it, which was most things. He had also, in a moment of practical necessity, moved his ship's portable power relay into the corridor outside, confirmed that the station's atmospheric processors were stable, and removed his helmet. The air tasted like minerals and something faintly sweet, the way greenhouses smelled just before everything bloomed. When the filaments began to release, they did so slowly, one by one, withdrawing from her temples, her wrists, the points along her spine, each one pulling back into the column like roots retreating. The amber glow intensified for approximately 4 seconds, then dropped to its baseline pulse. She fell. Not dramatically. Just a slow, gravity-remembering descent. And Cole was already moving, already crossing the room, and he caught her before she reached the floor, which was not something he had planned, but which happened anyway because she was falling. And there was nothing else to do. She was heavier than she looked, solid in a way that surprised him. Her skin was warm, warmer than human, and the faint luminescence he had observed from across the room was, up close, not just visual. It was thermal. A faint, consistent output that registered on his suit sensors as approximately 44 degrees Celsius, which should have been a fever and appeared to simply be baseline. Her eyes opened. They were gold. Not metaphorically, not amber or hazel or light brown. Gold with a structure behind the iris that did not look like a pupil so much as a slowly adjusting aperture, expanding in the low light, contracting when she turned her face toward the column's glow. She looked at Cole. Cole, to his credit, did not drop her. She said something. Her voice was low and unhurried, and the language was nothing he had ever heard, nothing that matched any database in his suit's linguistics module, nothing that sounded like it had evolved in the same phonological neighborhood as any human tongue. He said carefully, in the clearest English he could manage, "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Cole. I landed here because I had to. I can leave when the debris field clears." She watched his mouth while he spoke. Her expression did not change. Then she said something else, shorter than the first thing, and her eyes moved to the column behind him. He helped her stand. She was unsteady, not weak exactly, more like a person finding their legs after a very long journey in a very small space. She took her own weight after a few seconds, released his arm without looking at it, and walked to the column. She pressed both palms flat against it. The crystals responded, brightening under her hands, and she stood there with her eyes closed for a full minute while Cole stood behind her and did not know what to do with himself. When she turned around, something had shifted in her face. A calibration, like a system coming fully online. She studied him the way he had studied the room earlier. Thoroughly, methodically, starting with his boots and ending with his face. Her gaze was not hostile. It was the gaze of someone accounting for everything, measuring everything, filing everything into categories that did not yet have labels. She spoke again, different cadence this time. Slower, deliberate. Cole held up his tablet and said, "I am recording. I want to communicate. I do not know your language." She tilted her head. Then she reached out and put 2 fingers against his suit's chest panel, right over the speaker grill. A pulse of warmth traveled through the suit material, brief, precise. The suit sensors logged an electromagnetic fluctuation that Greg classified as unknown. Then she said a word, and Cole understood it, not in any way he could explain. It did not translate. It arrived in his mind the way a memory arrived, already there, already his, carrying with it meaning and texture, and the faint impression of a very old and very tired mind deciding to speak plainly. The word was awake. Cole stared at her. She said another word, long, Then another. Alone. And then she looked at him with those gold aperture eyes, and the next word she gave him was not a word so much as a question that arrived already shaped, already asking, "You?" "Yes," Cole said, because that felt like the only honest answer. "Me." She lowered her hand. The amber column pulsed once, steady, and the room felt different than it had 3 minutes ago. Fuller, like something that had been missing had returned and did not yet know how large a space it had been missing from. Cole pulled up his field tablet and started a new file. He labeled it First Contact, Accidental, Debris Field, Unknown Station, Unknown Species, going better than expected. Greg flagged that the debris field outside would remain dense for approximately 62 more hours. Cole set the tablet on the floor, sat down, and looked at her. She looked back. Then he said, "I think we have some time." She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone, the open hands, the lack of movement toward the door. She sat down across from him, cross-legged, with the column pulsing amber between them, and she placed her hands on her knees and waited with the patience of someone for whom waiting had always been just another form of living. Her name was not speakable with a human tongue. What she offered Cole instead was the sound closest to it. A 2-syllable exhale that fell somewhere between a word and a sigh, with the emphasis landing on the second beat like a question that had already given up on being answered. It was the name she had given herself after the others left. She communicated, not the name she had been born with, because the one she had been born with belonged to a voice she no longer owned. Cole called her Aya. She considered this for a long moment, lips pressed together, gold eyes tracking something in the middle distance. Then she nodded once, a gesture she had picked up from watching him in the first 8 hours of their cohabitation. She was an extremely fast learner. The communication between them had evolved in a way that Cole found difficult to fully explain, even to Greg, who was logging everything. The touch transfer she had done on the first day was not translation. It was closer to key exchange, a shared cognitive handshake that gave them about 60 words of overlapping meaning, mostly operational. Stay, move, food, question, no, yes, and the concept she returned to more than any other, which she delivered not as a word, but as a sensation. Time. The weight of it. The enormous, unmoving weight of years that had piled on top of her while she slept. She had been inside the column for 2,040 years. She told him this not with numbers, which were not in their shared vocabulary, but by pointing to the crystal records embedded in the column's base, each one a year log, each one sealed and cold, and then sweeping her hand across all of them in a single long gesture and letting him feel the scale of it. Cole sat with that for a while. He had read about alien ruins. Everyone had. They were a staple of survey work, dead stations and silent ships and structures that had been old before humans figured out fire. What the textbooks did not prepare you for was the fact of one of them sitting 3 feet away from you, eating reconstituted protein paste, because her station's food synthesis had gone offline somewhere around year 800, and she had not been awake to notice. She did not like the protein paste. She communicated this with an expression that did not require any cognitive bridging at all. Cole laughed. It came out before he could stop it. Io went very still. He stopped laughing. Sorry. That was not threatening. That was a human response to something being funny. It means I am not afraid. She did not fully understand the words, but she understood the shape of what he had done. She had cataloged his expressions over the past day and a half with the systematic attention of someone who had once been very good at reading people and was now recalibrating a skill unused for millennia. She reached into their shared vocabulary and sent him the concept, explain. He tried to explain laughter. It took 20 minutes and several failed attempts. What finally worked was demonstrating it again, starting from the expression and working backward to the feeling. She watched him closely. She was quiet for a long time. Then she made a sound. It was not laughter. It was too precise, too musical, too contained. But it came from the same place laughter came from. The place where things were absurd. The only honest response was to acknowledge the absurdity out loud. Cole felt something shift in his chest that he did not put a name to. He asked her, through gesture and their shared vocabulary, and the slow, patient construction of meaning between two people with entirely different cognitive architectures. What had happened to the others? The station had clearly been built for more than one person. She was quiet for a long time. Then she used a gesture he had seen her use before, hand to chest, slow, like pressing something down. They left, she communicated. Not the word, the fact. Heavy with the particular weight of something that had been true so long it had stopped feeling like information and become just the shape of the world. Why did you stay? Cole did not ask, because he thought he already knew. She had stayed because someone had to, because the station held something important, because leaving was a choice that required knowing where to go, and she had not known. And because, he suspected but could not confirm, something in the column had chosen her the way a ship chose its last crew member, holding on to the one who had not yet decided to go. He told her about Earth, not the whole history, the shape of it. Blue planet, large water, loud species, very young. She listened with her full attention, which was an overwhelming thing to be the subject of. Her gold eyes did not waver. When he finished, she sent him a concept that took him a moment to decode. Young, she communicated, and then alive. Yes, Cole said. Both. She reached out and touched the side of his wrist, very lightly, with 2 fingers. It was not the electromagnetic transfer of the first day. It was smaller than that, more tentative, and the sensation that arrived was not a word. It was something closer to, I am glad you came through the debris field. Cole did not answer for a moment. So am I, he said finally. Greg informed him that the debris field density had dropped to 63% of its peak. Estimated clear time was now 38 hours. Cole acknowledged this and set the alert to passive. Aya had moved to the column and was working at its base, doing something with the crystal records that involved careful, practiced motions. Her hands knew this work even after 2,000 years. Muscle memory, Cole thought, or whatever the alien equivalent was. The body keeping what the mind had almost lost. He started drafting his contact report. He got 2 sentences in before he stopped. There were protocols for this. There were entire agencies for this. There were people whose entire careers had been preparation for the moment a human made contact with a non-human intelligence. Forms, committees, containment procedures designed to protect both parties. Cole stared at his 2 sentences. Aya was still working at the column. She had not looked at him. But her posture carried something he had learned to read in the past day and a half. A tension at the shoulders. An awareness of him without looking at him. She already knew. She had been sleeping for 2,000 years waiting for someone to arrive. And someone had arrived. And the machinery of his world was going to arrive next. And she knew this the way she knew everything. Completely. And without requiring it to be said. He saved the draft. He did not send it. He had 38 hours and a decision to make, and he was not yet ready to make it. The crystal records were a library. Cole realized this on the second day when Aya pulled one from the column's base and held it to the light, and the dust inside it moved. Not the dust of age. Patterns. Archived in the mineral lattice like text in a book, or footage in a chip, or memory in a brain. Each crystal was a year. 2,040 of them, cold and sealed in their slots, each one holding everything that had happened on this station in 12 months of the absence of almost everyone. Aya showed him how to read them. Not the content, the method. She pressed one to his fingertips and let the column's frequency do the bridging. And for approximately 3 seconds, Cole experienced the very precise sensation of an entry-level archival record from approximately 1900 years ago, which was a maintenance log for the station's water recycler. It was detailed. It was thorough. And it was unmistakably the work of someone who had been very alone for a very long time and had found, in the meticulous documentation of small mechanical functions, a way to keep their mind organized. He handed the crystal back. Aya held it carefully, the way you held things that were also old friends. He asked, through their shared vocabulary and the slow building work of gestures they had developed between them, what the station was for, what its original purpose had been. She took a while to answer. The concept she sent him was complex. She sent it in layers. First layer, watch. Second layer, record. Third layer, a sensation he could only describe as relay. The feeling of passing something forward, a signal from one point to the next. A chain of information moving across a distance so large it became abstract. Fourth layer, and this one arrived not as a concept, but as an image formed directly in his visual cortex, startling him into blinking. A map. Enormous. Galaxy scale. With points of light marking positions and lines connecting them, and at the center of the web, one point larger than the others, pulsing with the amber of the column. This station. You were the center, Cole said. She did not understand the words, but she understood his face. She sent him the confirmation. Yes. And then the next concept. Not anymore. The web had gone dark, node by node, over centuries. The signals had stopped arriving, and then stopped being sent, and then the lines between the points had simply ceased to exist, because there was no longer anything on the other end to complete them. And Aya had stayed awake as long as she could, and then she had not been able to stay awake any longer, and the column had taken her in and held her because that was what it was built to do. Preserve the last one, wait for contact, wait for something to come through the debris field, and wake her up. Cole was quiet for a long time. He was thinking about the 2 sentences of his contact report, still saved in his drafts folder. He was thinking about what happened when he sent it. The agencies, the committees, the people who had been preparing for this moment their whole careers. They would come here. They would fill this station with personnel and equipment, and the particular kind of organized chaos that humans generated when they found something important. They would be careful. They would be professional. They would absolutely mean well. And Aya would go from being the last keeper of a 2,000-year-old archive that she had maintained alone through the long dark of her own survival, to being a subject, studied, questioned, documented, housed in something comfortable and controlled, and not this station, not her column, not the crystal records that were the only remaining proof that her people had existed at all. He asked her, because he needed to know before he made any decisions. Was there anyone else? Anywhere? Any signal? Any remaining node in the web that still pulsed? She was still for a long time. And then she sent him something that was not quite a word and not quite an image. It was the sensation of reaching, of having reached for 2,000 years into the dark, in every direction, as far as the column could send, and finding nothing. And then the sensation of his ship dropping out of hyperspace into her debris field. "I was the signal," Cole said. He did not mean to say it out loud. It just arrived, fully formed. Aya looked at him. He met her gold aperture eyes. He said, "You waited 2,000 years, and I almost didn't stop. My navigation system glitched." She sent him the concept. "Here." "Yes," he said. "Here." Greg informed him that the debris field had cleared to 11% density. His ship could navigate out at any time. Cole acknowledged the alert. He stood up and walked to the column and put his hand flat against it, the way he had seen Aya do a dozen times. It was warm. The crystals nearest his palm brightened. He turned around. Aya was watching him with the total focused attention of someone who had been practicing patience for 2 millennia and was, for the first time in a very long time, not sure what was coming next. He said, "I am going to go to my ship and send a message. Not the contact report, a different message. To someone I trust." He used his hands to slow the words down, to make the shape of them readable even across the language gap. "I'm going to ask her to come here. She is a linguist. She is careful. She is not the committee." He found the shared vocabulary for, "Is that acceptable?" Aya considered this for what felt like a long time, but was probably 15 seconds. Then she sent him something layered and complex and careful, the most nuanced transmission she had attempted, and what it resolved to in his mind, when it settled, was, "Bring someone who will listen before they speak." "That is exactly her," Cole said. He went to his ship and pulled up his communications array. The relay station was still 4 light years out, but the message would bounce in under an hour each way. He keyed the frequency for Dr. Laura Voss, Xenolinguistics and First Contact Theory, University of New Chicago, currently on sabbatical in the outer survey belt. 3 light years closer to him than anyone else he knew and trusted. The message he sent was 6 words long. "Found something. Bring your good ears." Oh, then he walked back into the station and sat down across from Aya. And they continued the slow, patient, extraordinary work of learning to understand each other. In the amber light of a column that had been waiting for exactly this for 2,000 years and was, in its mineral and crystalline way, extremely satisfied with how things had turned out. The message came back in 90 minutes. Dr. Laura Voss, 41. 2 published first contact frameworks, 3 failed first contact simulations, and 1 deeply inconvenient divorce, responded with, "I am already moving. Do not touch anything. Do not let anyone else touch anything." "And what do you mean found something, Cole?" Because that phrasing is doing a lot of work. Cole read the message twice. Then he walked back into the column room and told Aya, through gesture and shared vocabulary, and the increasingly fluent, emotional shorthand they had built over 3 days in amber light and mineral-smelling air, that someone was coming. Aya received this with the stillness of someone who had long ago made peace with waiting. But her hands, Cole noticed, had stopped their methodical work on the crystal records. She was listening. Not for sound, for the particular vibration that the column transmitted when something entered the debris field. The same vibration that had woken her, the same frequency that had cut through 2,000 years of silence and said, "Something is here." It had not woken her in exactly the way she had expected. She had been designed for a formal signal, a specific frequency belonging to her network, the coded pulse of an ally from a known civilization. But instead, she had gotten a human ship with a broken navigation system and a pilot who had nowhere else to go. She had no framework for this. Her training had not covered it. But 2,000 years in the column had taught her that the universe did not organize itself around expectation, and that arrival was arrival, whatever form it took. Cole was sitting on the floor going through his contact report draft again. He had revised it 11 times. It currently contained 4 sentences, none of which mentioned committees or agencies. It contained coordinates, an equipment manifest, and a request for a small team of researchers with specific qualifications and specific instructions about what careful looked like in practice. He read it to Aya, not because she could understand it, but because she had been the only other person in this room for 72 hours, and the habit of thinking out loud with her had formed in a way he had stopped trying to prevent. She listened with her head slightly tilted, gold eyes tracking his face. When he finished, she sent him one concept. Careful. Yes, he said. I am trying. She reached out and pressed 2 fingers to the back of his hand, lightly, briefly. The transfer that came was not a word. It was a recognition. A small, precisely delivered acknowledgement of, I see that. Cole looked at his hand for a moment after she withdrew. Laura Voss would arrive in approximately 60 hours. In those 60 hours, Cole and Aya built what no formal first contact protocol had ever budgeted time for. Not a procedure, a foundation. The slow, unglamorous, essential work of 2 minds learning to take each other seriously across a gap of species and history and 2,000 years of waiting. She showed him the full archive, not the contents, the scope, the thousands of crystals, the record of a civilization that had mapped a significant portion of this arm of the galaxy, had maintained a network of watchers at key coordinates, had spent several hundred years in active communication with 6 other species, and had then, over the course of about 50 years, simply gone quiet. No catastrophe in the record, no final transmission. Just the signals growing less frequent and then stopping. The way a voice trailed off in the middle of a long story when the speaker finally fell asleep. She had not recorded her theory about what had happened. She had recorded only the facts. Cole found this the most heartbreaking thing about her. Not the 2,000 years, not the solitude, but the discipline of a mind that had kept recording facts long after the facts had become unbearable. He told her this. She did not fully understand the words, but she understood his face, which had stopped being a foreign object to her and had become a text she could read. And she sent him back something that was not sadness and not acceptance, but the exact feeling of a word that did not exist in his language. For the state of having gone so far past grief that you arrived somewhere quiet. Cole thought he recognized the territory even if he had no map for it. Laura arrived 63 hours after his message. She came in a small research vessel, alone, which was the correct call. She matched with the docking bay, and her voice came through Cole's suitcom before she had even finished the docking sequence. I'm going to need you to debrief me on the walk from the bay, she said, because I can see through my cockpit window that this station is at least 900 years old, and the architecture does not match anything in the known catalog, and my hands are shaking slightly. That is a normal response, Cole said. I am a professional. My hands do not shake. They are definitely shaking. Shut up and come get me. He met her at the bay entrance. She was shorter than he remembered, wearing a full hazmat-adjacent research suit and carrying 4 different recording devices and a translation array that cost more than his ship. Her hair was pulled back tightly, and her eyes were moving across everything with the rapid, systematic intake of a person who had spent her life preparing for exactly this, and was now furious at herself for not being ready enough. "You look terrible," she said, which was how Laura Voss said, "I am very glad you are alive." "She is in the column room," Cole said. "Her name is Aya, which is not her real name, but it is what I have been calling her, and she has accepted it. She is going to look at you the way she looked at everything when she first woke up, which is like she is taking an inventory. Do not find this threatening. She has been alone for 2,000 years, and she is recalibrating." Laura stopped walking. 2,000 years, she said. Give or take 40. Laura resumed walking at a slightly faster pace. They reached the column room. The door was open. Aya was standing at the column with her back to them, hands pressed flat against the crystal surface, head bowed. The amber light was doing its slow pulse. The fossilized garden down the hall had nothing to do with this room. But Cole always thought of it here, the ultraviolet light still trying to feed plants that had turned to stone, still performing its function in the dark. Aya turned around. She saw Laura. Her eyes moved from Laura to Cole, and back to Laura with the same systematic inventory gaze he had described. Then she looked at Cole with a question in her face that did not require any cognitive bridging at all. "This is Laura," Cole said. "She listens before she speaks." Aya considered this. Then she walked across the room and stood 3 feet from Laura and studied her with the concentrated attention of someone for whom the arrival of another mind in a room that had contained exactly one mind for 2,000 years was a thing requiring full accounting. Laura, to her very considerable credit, stood still and let herself be studied. Then Aya raised one hand and pressed 2 fingers very lightly to the back of Laura's wrist, and the column pulsed once, a single amber beat. And Laura made a small, involuntary sound, and her eyes went wide, and she turned to Cole and said, "Oh." "Yes," Cole said. "She just gave me a concept." "What was it?" Laura looked back at Aya. "Beginning," she said. Aya lowered her hand, and the 3 of them stood together in the amber light, at the center of a web that had gone dark 2,000 years ago, and was now, in the most unlikely and improbable way, beginning to illuminate again, one small patient point of contact at a time, in a debris field that did not appear on any chart, because the most important things rarely did.